The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a specialist recruitment agency operating in the metals, engineering and manufacturing industry sectors. Enjoy the pod.
Hey guys, Mike and Pete.
The Metal Guys. You really are talking right into that, aren't you?
Only right at the start.
An average Chris Moyes.
It just makes Jacob's job harder. Just turn me down now.
Famous.
We're joined today by Joe Stallion, strong name. Joe, can you just give us a bit of a whistle-stop tour of who you are?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I can't take credit for the name. That was given to me. But in terms of the business, I am a director at a business called Solvy Digital that offers marketing services to industrial brands, anything from manufacturing to commercial supplies and construction.
And how tough is that?
I've done easier jobs, let's say. So I think it's definitely challenging. But over the years as a business, I think we've refined how we operate, everything from business development to delivery and just our general communication with these types of businesses to not only make it easiest and most effective for ourselves, but also for those individuals that we're dealing with that maybe aren't used to having these marketing communications.
Why did you pick that sector out of curiosity? Because literally when you've got a business doing what you're doing, there's so many more easier sectors to get involved. Obviously, they'll be more saturated, but it's easier to get people who have got marketing budgets to give you money, aren't they, really?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I think many of these industrial brands have no marketing budget.
We agree.
They just have some pennies at the bottom of the barrel that they decide they want to throw at some social content or some ad hoc tactical stuff rather than real strategy. But in terms of why we chose that, back in 2019, we sat and analysed our existing customer base, and for some reason, somehow, we had quite a lot of these industrial brands in it. And we started to develop quite a unique understanding of the types of challenges that those companies were facing. And almost by default, I started to feel a bit of a duty to sort of serve those businesses and solve those challenges, no matter how difficult that would be from a commercial perspective for us as a business.
Well, I think sometimes you've got to go where the problem is. So when you're looking at that, like I'm hearing, these people had issues that were more complex than maybe some of these other clients that you'd got. And then you follow it, don't you? You follow the path, really, to the most resistance, in my opinion. So we've definitely seen that ourselves as a business, that you go with that area. But I'm interested to find out a bit more about how you got into marketing. Like what was your journey, uni, I guess, agency? How did that kind of happen?
Yeah, so the sort of story of the business, I studied in Bristol from 2016 to 2019, where I met my business partner now, a guy called Andreas, who is much more technical across the marketing spectrum, across the marketing side of things. For myself, I would consider myself as more of a entrepreneur that kind of sees those problems out there and goes to that market to solve those, mobilizing talent like Andreas and the rest of the team to solve those. But my main focus has been more on the business development, the sales side of things within that marketplace.
So you just started a bit straight out of uni, bang, done?
Second year at uni.
Okay.
We started off by attending loads of networking events within the Bristol and Bath area, which started to sort of help us understand how far behind so many small businesses are when it comes to their marketing foundations and the technology that they have in place. So from that very point, we kind of had the idea to go out and just literally charge pennies to try and start solving some of these businesses challenges for these businesses. And we got to work on doing that. We started to speak to them, make deals, whether that be simply a deal for them to introduce us to someone else or very, very low rates. It just was how it started. And over time, we started to see where we were having the big impact, which was in the marketing problems as such. And it went from there, and we grew the business. We exited out of university into the business, which during COVID was quite difficult, quite challenging, and have continued to do so ever since to where we are now, which is essentially a multi-six-figure agency that's growing quite nicely.
Nice. Well done. I think the thing for Mike and I is, like, we've both worked where we've had jobs and then set of businesses or gone into business partnership. Do you feel like you maybe missed out a little bit by not working for, say, a bigger agency just to kind of cut your teeth and then drop back in? Because I think sometimes you only learn by doing, which is why you're obviously doing what you're doing. But how come you went straight into running a business? Because a lot of people they shy away from going all in at a young age.
So I think it came with a different set of challenges. Those challenges of really not having the credibility and expertise we resolved by going out and doing what we knew we could do for free. Like basically we did that for free. We worked in these businesses. We got boatloads of testimonials and credibility from being able to offer those. And then what we did is obviously started increasing those fees, understanding the problems that had that value, and went from there. But in terms of the different challenges that I think you have in place if you don't go in from that young age, you don't go all in, is actually more so on the perspective of the sort of security. Like I had a uni hall that I was supported with from my family at that point in time, and I had not many overheads. I could take that risk then. Whereas when you're older and you've got a family in place, you've got people to support, it does make it equally as challenging. I just think in different ways.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that was, I mean, when we set up, both of us were in that kind of position where we're like, well, we're just going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't.
Yeah, no, so when you got nothing to lose, it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah. I want to talk about what you were finding with those, what I'd say more traditional businesses, that industrial sector. What did marketing look like when you got into those businesses? What were they doing?
I would describe it as a very much account-based marketing strategy, but that's not what they knew that they were doing, right? So they were going to trade shows, they were getting placements in magazines, they were doing all of these activities to target a very specialist small group of customers that they knew they could work with. And one of the challenges that we've seen, or one of the things that they don't do, is use what they're doing, so trade shows, magazine placements, general PR, to then build out that online digital presence too. So even if it's just the case of getting a video of one of the sales reps at a trade stand, or getting a picture of one of the team with their recent placement in a magazine, all of those are really low barrier to entry ways that they can start building that online presence and establishing that brand online through really investing no more money than they have from their $5,000 trade show stand and their $2,000 placement in a corporate magazine.
We find that, I mean, we go to trade shows when we were both in the metal industry working in distribution. They were good fun, weren't they? You know, travelled all over the shop to these kind of events. There's this mantra that you hear, if I get one customer off a trade show, it's paid for itself, which I think is abysmal, really, that if that's the goal, I'm just trying to get one, you know, just to cover the costs of it. I think there's so much more you can do with that, but it's difficult sometimes to then get someone to buy into spending money on what you're suggesting, and what I've been trying to do for the last couple of years, of getting people to go, right, actually, let's build a social presence and let's actually get people coming to us. Because they're just so used to spending money on a trade publication or going to an event. Now, there's value in those, definitely value in doing those things, but how are you finding having those type of conversations and then getting people to, because sometimes there isn't even like a specific way you can give them an ROI. You're kind of suggesting that this is the right thing to do. But talk to me about some of those conversations that you were having with businesses, and then we'll dive more into social media afterwards.
Great. So there's two things that I would add here. I think the first thing is that you have to put it into context that they will innately understand. So even if you're talking about content that you put out in terms of impressions, you can say and get them to understand, okay, how many people do you think are seeing your brand, seeing your presence, speaking to your people at a trade show? And if you put that into then the context of creating a really great brand video to go out on social and the number of people that can see that, imagine it being repurposed multiple times, that then puts it into the context of, okay, I might get 10,000 eyes on my brand at a trade show, I might get 25,000, 50,000 eyes on my brand at on social or other core channels. So just making sure that you're putting it into that context and helping them understand that it's actually having very similar effects is important. And the second thing would be showing them and making them aware of what their competitors are doing. So many of these industrial brands are so focused on the do, they're so focused on where they are now rather than what competitors are doing within the marketplace, which is becoming increasingly digital, and they're doing some really interesting and innovative things with video, with content, with marketing. And it's easy to have your head down on what you're doing currently and then forget what the future looks like and get so far behind that you've lost at the end of the day.
When I look at a trade show, and you probably say the same as me with this, but a lot of the time you've got the bowl there where it's just a business card bowl, isn't it? And you're just almost trying to grab business cards off as many people as possible, bring them back to work to then start phoning them up, or they sit on a table and don't get followed up either. I think if I was looking at it as I used to when I had a metal business, I'd look and think, well, I've tangibly seen these people. I'm paying for these people to turn up at this show. They're in my specific market, the mix of customers that I want to be dealing with. And it's almost the onus is on the event organizer to get me, I'll pay them to get me some leads, and then I'll follow those leads up. When you talk about, the impressions will be higher, because you might say have 200 cards in a bowl after 2 days. So that's effectively 200 impressions. Whereas you put a video out, you might get like 3,000-4,000 impressions on that. So it's like, you'd be like, well, I want that if that's the thing. But obviously the relationship building that you can do on an exhibition stand could be far more valuable than it can if someone's just passively watching a video. So just because you've got the bigger numbers and the reach, how do you find then trying to get those customers? Because I would, as a business owner, I'd be saying, I'm seeing these people, but they're not ringing me up. I'm not quite sure who they are. Yeah, unless someone likes it or writes a comment, I've got like 4,000 views. I don't know who the 4,000 people are. I've got no metrics for it. But if I've got business cards and I've met someone, had a conversation, written it down, there's more value in that. So how are you overcoming that? And is that still one of the main issues you're finding?
I would say it does come up quite frequently, and it is definitely a challenge, but there's multiple things that can be done there. So in terms of the actual targeting of those, let's say top 250 prospects, if we're going back to this almost account-based marketing approach, let's say there's a top 250 prospects that sales team are targeting and you want them to see that video. Well, the targeting on paid LinkedIn strategies, you can pick the specific job roles from the specific companies and almost guarantee, as long as they're active on LinkedIn, that they are seeing that content. So there's two things. Of course, that video being pushed out organic, you might achieve those high levels of impressions, that high level of reach. But if you really want to guarantee to that business owner that the right people are seeing that content, a paid strategy can sometimes be appropriate. Now, when it comes to bringing prospects down from that high level awareness phase to more of the interest evaluation phase of the sort of customer acquisition model, you're then looking at using different approaches to capture that information and generate that inquiry. And that can be entirely different depending on what the business is. We worked with a sustainable PPE supplier recently, like personal protective equipment, and they brought out this fantastic range of hand protection gloves, essentially. And their whole target is HSE managers, people that sort of commercial directors, those types of role profiles. And we ran a massive LinkedIn ads campaign for those people for free samples of this particular product. And it went down exceptionally well. Like the impact that had on generating those conversations was quite profound for the business. So what it shows is that if you've got that right offer, but also you've got that right way of attracting people at that top end, at that awareness phase, and can effectively bring them down, then you can generate great results and clear return on investment. But it's the difficult thing is really understanding what your market needs and the offer that you can put in place for your brand. And many industrial brands struggle with that.
I think with like that example that you've given for PPE, gloves. So gloves, grippy gloves, I'm guessing. There's, you can pay whatever you want. There's high price, low price. I'm guessing your client wanting to get is high price, high quality. Apart from giving them away for free, because look, anyone can give something away for free. But what was it about those gloves that by giving them away for free was then converting? How was that then looking for the client?
So this is where the whole like sales and marketing alignment piece comes in, and we talk about this with our clients no end. Like we as a marketing team can provide as many leads as we possibly can. We can put tons of them on their plate, but if they're not being followed up effectively and brought through a high quality customer journey, then there's no point essentially. And a lot of marketing teams out there, they would just blame the company that they're working with. You're not following them up, you're not engaging with them effectively, when actually they could be absolute low quality leads in the first place. So as a marketing agency, we have to be very, very clear on the quality of leads that are coming through and monitor that throughout the whole process. But what we do, which is potentially slightly different to other agencies out there, is we work with that client to map out what that customer journey looks like, everything from the follow-up call to getting that lead submission and the time frame that should be within, to adding them within email lists and other touch points that will help aid them through that journey. And that's been one of the elements that I would say has led to quite a bit of success with the effectiveness of that follow-up process and sequence, us almost keeping them accountable to it.
How do you manage that? No, because when you're talking there about having a sales process, a lot of the businesses you're probably speaking to, they don't have a sales process, do they? It's very much, we go to market for customers. And really, even that they're not very good at doing, if being honest, because they've just got products that they're more having inbound come in or counts grow. When they're looking for new business, and what they're really looking for is normally coming to you, I'd imagine, at the point where they're going, actually, our business is struggling a bit or we've lost a bit of market share. They're almost coming to you to say, well, here's some money, sort out my problem. So, I mean, how do you manage that expectation? Because I always think there's a lot of business in our sector, they market at the time they're losing. They don't market on a strong market, they market on a real poor one. And then they're coming to you with a budget which is never as much as what it needs to be, but it's a buy-in. But the expectation on that buy-in is so much more greater than what Pete's saying about going to an expert. And I spend 10 grand on an expert, speak to all the people they already know, and even the people who are coming on the stand aren't necessarily the right people, the people selling to you. So how do you manage that expectation? Because that's, in theory, what you say, it sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? But in reality, it's going, there's say 10, 20, 30 grand of budget. But in reality, someone thinks they're going to get like a return on investment of $1 million.
You do have to be realistic. And with many of our clients, we build that relationship where I can just say to them, like, that's not going to work. What you're doing there is not going to work. And I think many agencies would be out there and just be like, okay, we'll take the budget, we'll do as best as we can. We'll do what we can to make it work. And then at the end of the day, they either say, oh, sorry, no promises, it's not guaranteed. Or they'll potentially, even worse than that, blame it on the customer for not following up the leads and not engaging with them. And it can just have that quite hostile sort of approach. So yeah, it is challenging. And many of these businesses aren't used to having any sort of processes in place. It's all sort of dealing with inbound leads and just sort of taking their orders as such. So there is a bit of development that has to happen on their end to be able to be asking these right questions and even just understand the lifetime value of a lead that comes in rather than just seeing it for that initial order. Like if we bring in a specific account to a company, they have to understand that over the next 3 years they might spend 250k with them, but that first order could be break even for the cost that it took to get the lead through. So yeah, it's not just a marketing problem, it's not just a sales problem. It has to really be incorporated throughout the whole sequence, throughout the whole process. And we just become really honest with our clients and say, look, if you don't do your bit in this process, if you don't do box A, B, and C within this journey, then it's not going to work.
Do you suffer from any of these problems? Are you asking around your office trying to find a new supplier or source materials? Have you got aged or high-priced stock that you'd like to liquidate anonymously? Or would you like new business from customers that are guaranteed to pay you for your materials? If the answer to any of the above is yes, then you'll be pleased to know that the Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by SteelBuy. SteelBuy are a digital platform revolutionising the way businesses trade metal products online. SteelBuy offers risk-free trading where sellers are guaranteed to be paid, and automated processing, including certification, logistics, and invoicing. The network of vetted buyers and sellers is continually growing, and it's all housed in an easy-to-use trading platform accessible on any device. The online business-to-business marketplace for products is rapidly gathering pace, and SteelBuy are ideally positioned to capture the changing demands of steel buyers. So check out SteelBuy today and be part of the future of metal trading. Now let's jump back into the podcast.
You know, when the leads coming through, obviously you're talking about managing leads, clients managing those leads. How are you managing that? Because there's got to be times where a mail shot goes out, a post goes out, someone like Pete engages with it, makes a phone call, and doesn't say, I've just received a mail shot, or I've just seen a post on LinkedIn, I'd love to give you an inquiry. Because as a salesperson, we get it in our office, things go out, and it's like, oh, I've just picked up this job. And you can never understand where that's either coming from. Our socials, from our mail shots, to someone just picking up the phone. How do you that must be an issue sometimes to be able to then determine an ROI for your client.
Absolutely. Attribution is so difficult across marketing in general, in my opinion, but specifically in the industrial business space where you do have people kind of questioning it more maybe than other sectors. So yeah, attribution is very difficult, and I'd love to be able to say this is the clear-cut answer. But what I find is that different clients work with us for different reasons, and where they place that value can be slightly different. So what we try and do when we're working with a business first off is we try and have a brand building exercise as part of the package, but also something within that package that allows them to see quite a quick response from their ideal customers. Right? Like if we just work with businesses from a brand building perspective from day one with nothing else, that takes time. They're not going to be generating leads within the first 14 days. But if you have whether it be PPC, whether it be a socialized campaign, whether it even be a sort of a high converting segmented email list that maybe they haven't targeted before, all of those can have that quite quick response to then give them that trust that the brand building exercises that they're also putting budget to are going to yield results on return investment within the next 4 to 6 months. And they begin questioning that less. They become happier with that and are more satisfied with it as an overall marketing solution.
Leading on from the question Mike's asking there about how, because what we're basically saying is we think that you can put strategies in place for businesses within the industrial space. If the people aren't used to or don't understand what they're doing in terms of how to close those opportunities, you're pissing money away, really, because you're burning the leads effectively as they're coming in. So how much of that are you trying to get away from the team and turn into sales funnels and segmenting lists and having mail campaigns going out as people kind of click on certain things and, funneling those people down, compared to having to kind of almost do a bit of training with the team? Like, what's the kind of split, and where are you seeing, like, if you were doing it yourself for, you're working for one of these businesses and you might have this problem that we're suggesting that the people are the issue, what's your approach? Do you think it's better to train the people and get them to understand, or to funnel and take the people out of the chain, in your opinion?
Great question.
Thank you.
So
Just need a great answer now.
No pressure. No pressure.
Pressure's on. We've said that the overall context within the industrial business space is quite traditional. Therefore, I would say it's quite human. They're not used to these massive, and complex digital sequences that are sending them from platform to platform, channel to channel. And it's quite an ineffective way to do it. People get frustrated, they get annoyed, and it often doesn't generate the results that people would go in and expect. So I would say ensuring that they have the skill set to deal with those inquiries is probably more effective than trying to replace that with really kind of complex and thought out processes and sequences. Now, that's not to say that those shouldn't be put in place also, but I think it should just be done in quite a mindful and careful way. In terms of the training and the development of the existing team, we always make sure that with anyone that we're working with, and I encourage any marketing department or marketing agency to do this, having that really honest, really transparent two-way conversation with anyone that they're sending those leads to. that salesperson that you've sent that lead to needs to be able to come back to you 10 minutes after calling that lead and say exactly what the problems were with it, what were the challenges, how good was it even. And when you can start having that conversation, you can then get this transfer of information that allows for a much more effective and sort of clear outcomes with what you're doing on both sides, whether it be the marketing activity to generate the leads or the sales follow-up to close them.
Again, if I go back to like, if it was you, it's your business, and you're doing, I don't know, say you're selling lubricants or something like that, industrial lubricants, are you thinking, I want to train my people better? I know the answer is probably going to be both. You want both of these things. But if we're looking at maybe a less effective sales force or a more traditional sales force that hasn't got these skill set, is the best way to do it at the moment to have the slicker website with better mail campaigns, you know, you doing like your pay-per-click and getting those leads coming in, and it almost being automated, taking the human element out?
You need this trained sales team first. You need the skilled people within the business to be able to follow this up and engage. We have turned away businesses before that we don't think would be able to deal with the level of inquiry or the outcomes that are provided. So yeah, the reality is people need to be trained. They need to have a clear skill set to deal with those inquiries, and it's different to just taking an order on the phone and giving a price. It's a completely different skill set. So yeah, train your people and then look at these key areas.
What are you seeing within the sectors that you're dealing with? What are the main issues that people are coming to you with? Is it that they're looking to grow the business with more, or are they actually more going, actually we need to have a brand, we need to have more of a better online presence?
So someone asked me this the other day. They asked, do you think your market is more goal-oriented or more likely to try and get away from the pain that they're currently experiencing? And I think more and more industrial brands, whether they be manufacturers, commercial suppliers, construction businesses, they're starting to feel quite a lot of pain, right? And I think that could be the product of the challenges over the last couple of years economically. But I think they're starting to feel quite a lot of pain, which means that they can't then start looking at, okay, we want to hit this target, we want to be aspiring towards this, we want to be able to achieve this in 2024. And I think many of them are coming to us, or many of them are being receptive to those cold calls that I'm going out to get them on, and they're looking for someone to take away that pain. Now the question is, what is that pain? I think one of the elements is that they're starting to see the effects of all their customers transition to a more digital infrastructure, a more digital approach with their sales, with their marketing. And I'd also say that it's now trickling down to have an impact on revenue. They're looking to get back to that level of market share that they previously had, which they need to start introducing digital to achieve.
Over the last 2 years, saying predominantly the people who listen to this, like metal distributors, engineering companies, the last 2 years, they've had it probably their own way for like best 2 years that businesses have had. We're probably going into 2024, and if it's like people think it's going to be a tough year, do you think that people are more educated with, saying, like being on LinkedIn? I think kind of LinkedIn a few years ago was just almost a recruiter's dream. It was almost, go on LinkedIn to pick up a job, see what's going on. Where now people are looking at it more as a kind of a professional network, and it's giving people more of an idea of going, God, how big our sector is. Because I think there's a lot of times where people think, you'll hear people say, we can't grow any more in the UK, can't get any bigger, and now it's almost going, well, actually, there's a wider audience, globally, and we can start picking up new business. And would you say that people actually want to be a brand? Because I would say there's companies that I've dealt with in the past where the word brand is like Coca-Cola, Amazon. They wouldn't even think that they're a company that needs one or has some kind of identity about what they're about.
That's a great point, and not only for new business, but for recruitment as well. So as someone on the sort of younger end of things within the industry, I would say that I would not be willing to work in many of these industrial businesses with the way that they're currently set up, whether it be their approach to technology, how they look from the outside. I wouldn't say I'm personally like this, but many people within my sort of age bracket really care quite a lot about the type of company that they might be associated to, whether that be sustainability, whether it be like environmental impacts, whether it be culture. And many of these businesses within the sector are having to become more public about what they believe in, how they operate, just in order to get the sort of new team members, the staff through the door, the right people.
Have you had those conversations about where people are, obviously there's a lot of noise about skill shortages, but is that something that people are talking to you about, of how they attract new talent? And
all the time, but I don't think it's one of the reasons why people use us.
Yeah, of course.
I hear about it all the time. We have these conversations. It's that and business sale, acquisition. It also becomes a key one that comes up. They're more sort of emotive elements that individuals within the team might buy into. So whether I'm talking to a managing director that literally cannot expand its business's capacity without the right people, then maybe it feeds in. But for the most part, it's more kind of revenue focused. And
I'd say it's a byproduct, isn't it? Because that's what we've seen, haven't we? A lot of the clients I've been speaking to that we've done work with, they've said that it's really helped them with their recruitment, purely because people can see their business. And as you said, it's interesting what you're saying about the next gen or that younger generation, that they don't just want a job. It's not like a job for life type thing. It's like, I want to have some purpose. Like, there's got to be value in it, not just getting paid. And I think that profile that some of the businesses we've worked with, it's really helped them appear more modern.
It also seems like the senior people, they're actual people, they're actually got personality. It's like, because, when you look at people on LinkedIn, we're in such corporate photos that doesn't show any kind of emotion. It's like when you're talking there about kind of businesses of what they want to be and how they look at, it's like, it's making sure that when people are looking at it, they're real to what their team's actually about, and it's not just ticking every box to make sure they can't offend people, But when you're talking about building revenue, that's why people come to you. What are the successes you've seen through doing what you do? Well, what would you say is like one of the...
That's a good question.
Yeah, highlight reel. That's what we want.
No, I like that too.
Give us your elevator pitch.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would actually, from recent successes, like as in over the last month, I would say probably this campaign, we're talking real, the company or the product that we've been talking about is EcoVibe, which is pretty leading in the hand protection space. And the amount of large companies that they've had interested in that product, new customers that they've never worked with in their life before, it is definitely in the hundreds now. Like, they're bringing on hundreds of new customers a year for this specific product range, which is massive for them. Like, they've previously had teams of sort of SDRs on the phones that they're paying really quite decent rates to be able to generate that type of interest. And now this has become quite a gateway product for the overall distributor to then cross-sell and upsell into other product ranges, which is really going to be where the long-term revenue is for the business. But what becomes important then is that the business is good, that the business deals with its customers well. If that's not in place, then they're not going to get that return over the long term. They're not going to get those cross-sell opportunities. They're not going to be able to upsell onto new product ranges. They're not going to be able to kit them out for their high vis and their boots as well, because maybe they don't compare to their current supplier. So marketing is great, but it doesn't solve a business's end-to-end issues. So yeah, there are different challenges out there associated with that, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we see that a lot, don't we? I think businesses in our sector have really been developing, haven't they? Like, a lot of money's been spent on infrastructure. You can see the amount of qualifications that businesses have got, all the way up to like having cyber essentials and things like that. They're really looking at their businesses and actually trying to develop them. But sometimes you fundamentally go in there and it still can be a bit pieces of paper floating around and stuff like that, which is really what they want to be getting away from. And I think, again, when you're looking at going and talking to someone about doing a campaign, we'll use the example. So the gloves, it's a lead magnet to get lots of people involved. Talk to those people, get them to trial it. They love it. They start buying it, convert them, cross-sell. Brilliant. Classic marketing, really. I want to talk about that challenge again, based on what the premise that I've given you there of that campaign. Someone wants to make more money, make more sales, get more customers in. How are you then developing the other side, which might be the websites? Because typically the websites are poorly run, poorly maintained, and don't have the budget to do the more sophisticated things that they need to be doing to effectively make your campaigns work. So where do you see the development with tech to allow businesses to make the most of slick marketing campaigns?
Brilliant question. So in terms of how we operate and how we look at that as a business, we have to do our initial exercises to almost prove our worth, our value, before we even start talking about a piece of work that might cost them 20 grand, 25 grand, 30 grand for a brand new all singing, all dancing website. As soon as we've proven that worth and we've proven them the return on investment that we can generate them through other channels, whether that be email marketing, for example, then they're much more willing and much more likely to have that conversation. If we go in cold and we say that's what you need to resolve these challenges first off, then it's almost not even worth it. It's the amount of deals like that you close are very, very minimal. We all know that them having that website developed more effectively is going to be key for their growth, but are they willing to put that type of budget to it without sort of even having a taster first? Probably not.
On websites, as you've kind of dropped into that, there did seem a few years back with the growth of, again, if you look at LinkedIn and the way it was positioning itself with these company pages and things, that it was almost like you could probably spend more time developing, say, a LinkedIn profile page for a business with all the service elements that you can now add on there and everything like that, than actually working on your own website. And obviously the traffic that's going through these social channels is just going through the roof. So where are your thoughts on still having a website? Obviously you're going to need one, but like, what's the priority now in terms of that mix for social versus your own website? How are you seeing that?
Obviously they need both. I think using the website as a platform that is consciously focused on converting that traffic is key. Like, you don't just really want a brochure website sat there with a very, very traditional, very, very obvious structure. You need something that considers where your buyers are at in their journey and understands how they got there, right? If you are trying to convey this really clear, really authentic message across social channels, but then you've got a super corporate website with loads of stock imagery and something that feels like a completely different business, then the level of conversion that you get through that is really going to be shocking. It's not going to resonate with those individuals at all. So I would say what's probably more important than the cost of that website and how it's structured is almost the alignment it has with other channels that they're using and they're investing in as a business.
One of the issues that I keep looking at our space. Most websites are corporate. I mean, we're using the word corporate. The word I would use is incredibly boring, and with no content. There's no value. No one's going to drop on that website and be on there for more than 2 to 3 seconds.
Also doesn't match the image of what the business is. No, I think there's a way that people, the word corporate is, really, it's like PLCs, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you're dealing with an SME who's trying to have a corporate image. But then if they come in and had a site visit, they wouldn't match to what that company is. Well, the people aren't about that. And I think people should just embrace not being corporate if they're not. Because if you can still solve an issue, you're not just getting a job because you've got some flagpoles outside your factory. It's just...
I think one of the places that came from is people went through a phase of really looking at the big boys within the market, and they were seeing these massive fancy websites with various different languages on and features, and it's just not what it is to be an SME, especially within the UK. It just doesn't reflect the nature of that type of business. So yeah, I completely agree. I think the alignment of when someone finds your company through social, they visit that landing page or they visit your website and then they come onto you to have that site visit, needs to be consistent. It needs to be synchronized. And if it's not, people are going to start asking questions.
Because a lot of these big websites, they're crap. Yeah. Like you go on them, you can't even find a phone number or an email, and there's so much information. Like that doesn't even reflect what I think that business does. It's just so bizarre.
Also, they're faceless, aren't they? And I think now, a world where kind of people are building online communities through LinkedIn, it needs to be, that's what people buy into. We get people kind of give us inquiries due to the kind of personal brands that everyone within Compton Group's created. And so the time they come to go onto your website, it's just to get the telephone number, even if they go on our website.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is sponsored by TW Metals. TW Metals are a stockholder and distributor of nickel alloy, aluminium, titanium and stainless steel products in a range of forms, including tube, bar, pipe, extrusion, as well as sheet and plates. They have sites located in the UK, Europe, the USA and Southeast Asia, and are the largest supplier of aerospace tubes globally. With a whole host of accreditations and in-house processing capabilities, they are the first choice for OEMs, Tier 1s, fabricators and engineering companies across the world, and they're easy to deal with. I worked with them for many years, so I can recommend them. For more details, check out their website or even give them a call to chat about your requirements. Now let's get back to the pod.
I mean, if I look at our website visits to what our socials are, I just think people just look at our socials. I don't even think the website, I don't think it's that important, if I'm honest. It's not for our sector.
I think it's the closer. I think if someone has seen someone online and they're like, yeah, I like that person, what's the business? And then they're almost like, well, I think I'd buy from them, or I think I'd talk to them. Once they drop on the website, that's, because I always learned it as the brick click. I've said that before, like, your brick business should be the same as your click business. That's how they should kind of resonate and look the same. But it's almost like, okay, that's a professional business. That looks okay. It matches. The same bloke's there. There's his picture and his mugshot. The same values, the same everything. Yeah, I'm going to try them. I'm already like 90% of the way to buy anyway. But it's almost like the rubber stamp.
Yeah. I don't know. I reckon on our business, you just, like I get daily, it's just inbound messages on LinkedIn. Can I speak to you at lunchtime if they're looking for a job? And they've got a job they want to give you. They just message you saying, give me the job. Then if you look then to say, well, we've got lead forensics, if they've been on our website, they haven't. It's almost like we've seen that much of you. We're just gonna buy.
But then our website, you will come back into this, Joe.
Oh, good. You guys carry on. It's good stuff.
We haven't really built out, and that's the strategy for 2024. There's not enough value in our website at the moment when people are searching because they've got pain to land on the website, to then learn, to then be hooked in, and then to have a specific sales funnel or calls to action to get people in. So that's the thing that we'll be looking to change, because personally I see that there'll be value in it. But at the moment on the website, I think it's as bad as what I'm saying about other people. It's good enough that it looks okay and it's there, but there's no more depth to it.
Is there a level that in recruitment it's free? So it's almost like I don't need to do too much research, because if they don't find me the right person, there's no buying.
But if they don't know yet, say it's like Joe's customer, the one who does the PPE, they might drop on there and they've got a particular problem because they can't hire this particular type of person. If you've written an article with videos saying these are the type of companies that have had these type of problems, which are their problems, this is what we've done different to other agencies because we understand how frustrating it is. If you want some more information for free, click here and we'll send it. And that's kind of the hook to then, it's like the free glove to get them out. And I think that's where the website, personally, I think they're still really valuable, because the point I was going to make to yourself is mail shots and websites. I think they're the only two things that you can really control. I think when you then look at socials and you hear people talking about algorithms all the time, the algorithm change, it's like, look, things are changing all the time. But your website, if you've got decent backlinks or you've got decent landing pages that people are dropping on because of pay-per-click or whatever you're doing, you're always going to get that traffic and you're in control of that. Whereas if it's on social media, it just disappears. You haven't got that same kind of control. And it's the same with your mail shot list. If you can build it effectively, you can then market to those people strategically. Whereas if you're trying to do it online, you haven't got the same control. But again, like from your point of view, Joe, are you seeing that clients are receptive to that? And where are you pushing them? Are you pushing them more away from the traditional website mail shot, or is it spinning back that's actually where you're pushing companies more?
There's some really great stuff there, I think. In terms of driving traffic to that website, you've obviously got to have the confidence in that website, and you've obviously got to have the things there for people to come and see. If you don't have that, then by nature you're not going to be bothering to send them to that website, and they're not going to be visiting it. They might just drop on the LinkedIn profile instead. Looking at a slightly different example for this idea around the email lists, another one of our clients, they do sort of street supplies, traffic management solutions, cones, barriers, ramps, cable management, all of those types of things for sort of construction businesses. And they have a reasonably large email list of about 16,000 contacts that we segment and we target quite strategically with email marketing communications, which then by default drives them to their quite decent e-commerce website. And they consistently make 12 to 20 grand per email that come through that.
Not
profit, revenue through that email. But if they're sending 4 emails a week to different segments of that audience and making 12 to 20 grand per email, then that starts to really add up over time. And if they're consistently bringing new people into that email list through people landing on the website and placing orders, making sure that they're brought into that sequence properly, it has an absolutely massive impact over time. And it makes sure that you're the person that people think about when they think, okay, I need that cone, or I need that ramp, or I need that barrier. The objection that we often get here from a new business standpoint is if someone needs a cone, then they'll buy a cone. They're not going to buy a cone because we've sent them an email, or they're not going to buy a cone because we've sent them a single product discount, or because they've left it in their basket. They're a procurement manager that has been asked to buy a cone by someone that could be their site manager. So why are they going to buy it through an email? Well, the sort of situations that these businesses are having is they've got a ton of different suppliers on their books that they can work with. We're not trying to achieve the objective of should you buy a cone. We're trying to achieve the objective of should you buy a cone from us, and that's the issue. That's the thing that solves, which makes it very difficult, different from your traditional B2C marketing or even your traditional B2B marketing. Really, like you're not trying to change the buying. You're not trying to change the buying habit in terms of what they buy. You're trying to change who they buy it from.
Yeah, well, that's for us. I mean, I've been doing a lot more segmenting the list, looking at data, taking out all the hard bounces, the stuff that's killing things. And that might be worth just mentioning as well. Like, I can see now that there's a lot more. You can't just buy lists like you used to be able to do. You can't just send spam emails out. It's really impacting on deliverability and, where a company, or what do companies need to be aware of if they're going to start a strategy, say they're going to do this themselves, because a lot of businesses, they have a go themselves first. What are the key things that they need to be aware of to make sure that they're not really affecting their domain or the deliverability?
2 things there. I think we can split this into cold email and we can split this into your traditional email newsletters, right? If we're talking about cold email, it does still work. We operate cold email sequences for a number of our clients, which generate really great results with large companies like Balfour Beatty and Kia Group and those types of accounts. When we're talking about the things that you need to consider when using that approach, you should never be using the domain that you currently host your website on. You need to have a completely separate domain. So let's say it was solvydigital.com versus solvydigital.co.uk. You need to be very careful with the impact that you have on your domain through that. And you need to really monitor that carefully. You need to have all of your settings set up, your DKIM settings, all of those key areas need to be set up effectively to make sure that your deliverability still remains high and reasonable. When we're looking at the email marketing newsletters, which I would consider as your existing database of contacts, people that you've done business with or people that are within your CRM that you've communicated with in the past, well, you need to take similar care, but with that, you have the opportunity to segment that based on what you know. So let's say we're talking about the traffic management supplier. One of the segments that we did for them is customers that haven't bought with them in the last 365 days. Previously, they were completely out of the list. We weren't even targeting them. They weren't active buyers, but we ran a retention campaign or an activation campaign for those specific accounts. And people came back and they were buying bike shelters and they were buying these random items that must have just come up in conversation within their businesses because that's what they needed to see at that point in time. Now, we wouldn't recommend sending tons and tons of emails to that list because the likelihood is it's not a very active list. People have moved on. And when you start to get those hard bounces over time, it's going to have a real impact on the deliverability for the rest of your list coming from that same domain. So what we would then do is we would then take out those hard bounces and then we would bring in the people that had engaged with that email into the main list, and then you'd have a sort of slightly more cleansed list to then go forward with for future activities.
So if you just, for people that don't know what a soft and a hard bounce is, you just give us that, like tell us what that is.
Yeah, so a hard bounce basically is that the domain like no longer exists. Like there's nothing there to kind of send it to. It doesn't exist anymore, right? Whereas a soft bounce can be anything from maybe a spam filter has like blocked an email, or those types of standard things. The domain still exists, it's still active, it's still there. That inbox still exists that you're trying to send it to. And often most mail platforms, they'll send those soft bounces again. They'll try it maybe a day later or a couple of days later. But the kind of concern or the issue is if it tries to do that too many times, then again, we take them out of the list, because for most email platforms, you're just wasting contacts that you have access to anyway. And we'd rather bring in new people that are coming into the CRM or into the list rather than just sort of flogging a dead horse and targeting those.
The Metal Guys Talk Business podcast is brought to you by Compton Group, a recruitment agency operating in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors. With a large, engaged network of candidates and clients, we help businesses make great hires in sales, operational, technical, quality and managerial roles, as well as assisting people in their careers by matching their unique skills and aspirations to businesses that are hiring. Having worked with more than 200 niche businesses since 2019, Compton Group have become the go-to recruitment partner for many of our industry's leading names. So talk to us about your next career move, or let us work with you on your business's next hire. Compton Group, powering employment in the metal, manufacturing and engineering sectors.
When you talk about all these lists, because people listening work in businesses where they don't mail shop, don't have a mailing list, don't have, they've got a very old-fashioned business in a way, if you look at how some businesses are when they're doing marketing. How do they get to a position to start thinking, well, actually, we need to start collecting this data, we need to start having mailing lists, we need to start putting content out there, we need to start worried about what domains to go in, because all of this stuff is like, someone's got to start somewhere, haven't they? What would you do to get to a point to think, well, actually, we need to start doing something to start marketing our business?
Yeah, that's a great point. So it's all well and good with an e-commerce business, right? Like you're getting people submit their email addresses on a daily basis through your website. That's easy. Let's take another example that we specifically work with, a company that do sort of material handling equipment based in Doncaster, really old business. And we're in the process of mentoring their marketing executive to set up his own email marketing campaigns for this business. Now, they've got data from about 15 years ago. Now, is that going to be any good? Probably not. So they need to start off, the place they need to start off by is by looking at what they have access to, understanding where it came from, and thinking quite critically about, are these people even going to still be in the businesses? Will they know who we are? Let's make sure that we put them through a nice welcome sequence or campaign to set expectations about what we're even going to send them in the first place, a double opt-in, things like that initially. But I would say that's the key place to start. And then really understanding what you're going to send. What are your prospects, what are your customers going to find valuable and interesting? It's not just going to be your latest material handling product, firing that out. So what we've been working on with this company is quite a value-led strategy called Engineering in Focus, which is basically a report on what's happening within the world of material handling and general engineering. And that is what they're launching with in January.
So they're going for a kind of valuable content strategy, and then off the back of that, get the buy-in at a later date.
Yeah, and it's more of a relationship building strategy. Like, we're not trying to get someone to buy a 250 grand piece of machinery on the back of one email, right? We're trying to, again, encourage them to be making decisions for when they do need something, to be talking to this particular company rather than the other competitors just around the corner.
How often do you think people should be putting content out, regarding, say, socials and then mail campaigns? How often do you think you should be,
Great question. So I think with the short form content, social posts, we always say between 3 and 5 times per week. And it's about how easy you can make that for your team. Like, firing content out across a business page is almost always not the best approach to use. When you're looking to build a brand, when you're looking to sort of build relationships with the customers that your sales team are engaging with, we always recommend using that content through the business page. And we do a bit of an educational piece where we help that sales team really easily and really clearly repurpose that content that's created to then be distributed throughout their own channels. And we help them understand why they're doing that, right? Where are they directing them to? What's the call to action that we're trying to achieve from these pieces of content? And that often helps achieve better reach for the overall business. But what you need to have in place there is a really clear buy-in, as I say, between what they're doing, what these activities are doing, and the outcomes that they're looking to achieve or where they're looking to drive that attention to. If you don't have that, then by week 2, they'll be like, what's the point? I'm busy.
Yeah. Okay. And then about mailing lists, sending that out?
Mailing lists, we often talk in quite high volumes within mailing lists. Like I spoke earlier, about 4 times a week. Obviously, we're not sending 4 emails a week to one B2B audience. We're specifically crafting and selecting different lists based on what their current activities are. Let's say we pick a list of customers that have bought a cone within the last 3 months. Well, we know anyone that buys a cone is also likely to need a barrier system. Okay, so let's retarget, let's send a campaign to those people that recently bought those cones with the barrier systems. And that is sometimes in kind of ad hoc emails that go out based on the objectives for that month, or it could be crafted sequences that they get put through. So they get an email on day 1, another one on day 7, and it goes thereafter.
That's a lot of content, isn't it, to be going out? I mean, like how often are clients having to speak to you to manage that amount of content?
We often with our clients have at least 1 hour and a half long strategy session every month. That's where we set out the plan for what that month looks like ahead. But we also use quite an effective, what we like to think is quite an efficient and effective content management system to then distribute out that content. It's a system called Planable, which our team insert and input all of that content within, whether it be social content, whether it be email, whether it be blogs that go live. And we then proceed to click a button on there that says request approval from the client. The client then ticks a button and then it goes out automatically. So it's quite efficient in the way it works. And that then helps us to not annoy customers after a few months of asking them to do that. They quite enjoy it sometimes, I think.
When you're doing like socials, how hard is it to kind of manage people's expectations that they're not looking for likes? Because people think a good post is you can get 50 likes, 100 likes, or you can get, I can do posts, I get 8 likes, but actually I get 2 inquiries. Then I've had posts where I've had, and Pete's had them, we've had like 250,000 impressions, 300 likes, and I've had 0 anything out of it. So it's like, how do you manage people? Because almost have this world now where it's like everything's based on likes, everything's based on how many connections you have. So, when people are looking at yourself, they'll go, oh, you're telling me all of this, but your LinkedIn connections might be, I don't know, 2,000. Your last 6 posts, you've only had 7, 8 likes. How hard is it to kind of get that across when you're dealing with clients that I'm not feeling that kind of pressure of being a social influencer?
Yeah. I think it is a problem. I think many people out there, they set almost false expectations about what can be achieved, and then people come to you and they say, "Oh, I want this," or "Why aren't we getting that amount of impressions on our content?" But again, it comes back to having those really clear, honest, and transparent conversations. Do you want something to stroke your ego, or do you want something that's going to generate you business? And over time, we've got so much evidence that has backed up that that's the case, that I'm totally prepared to have those conversations now, and I can have those conversations with the people that we're dealing with. If we didn't, I feel like I would be doing them a disservice, because we could get them maybe not 250,000, but we could get them 7, 8, 9, 10,000 impressions and really high engagement. But if I back myself and say, look, we can do that, and sometimes it's right to do that from a brand perspective, but in other situations we need to slightly change tact and do something differently. And when you've built that trust, when you've built that relationship over time, people are quite happy to go along with it.
What do you think a good LinkedIn post looks like when you're looking at impressions and, likes or whatever, obviously, what do you think that looks like as a...
So again, I hate to be this guy, but I think it depends on where it's being distributed from. A personal post coming from a personal brand, 2, 3, 4, 5 10,000 impressions is a nice place to consistently be. And what makes a good post from a personal brand perspective, it's often got to be quite integrated with real world experiences and story. So story is becoming a massive component at the moment within marketing in general, where you can give a really clear insight into what your day-to-day life looks like, and people resonate with that. People buy into it, the challenges, the trials, the tribulations of being a X, Y, and Z within the metal sector, for example. And that has an impact. From a business page post, I would say there has to be similar elements, but it's again, I'm using this language, but it would be slightly more corporate. It would be slightly more curated in how it's distributed and how it's approached. Higher quality video rather than a video that's just kind of shot off someone's phone. It'd be nicely designed graphics. It could be testimonials. It could be case studies. It could be really clear call to actions. Again, everything's created by having a purpose rather than just chucking stuff out and having no strategy behind it.
I think the biggest issue is it's the time. You know, when you're saying like it's got to be a nicely shot video, it's got to be good graphics. Like, it takes so long to craft that type of content consistently over and over again with interest and writing. And I was going to come on to content writing, because I think, you know, ChatGPT just blew up a couple of years ago, and it was like, wow, this is brilliant. And working in the creative space, it was like, oh, this is fantastic. I can streamline what I'm doing. Realistically, it helps, but it also creates more problems because you can do more quicker and other people can do things themselves, or as it seems. What are your thoughts on content writing? Because everyone nowadays is a content writer.
I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
You
write a post.
don't. You do.
Generally. But yeah, talk to us about, I don't want to use the word AI. I hate when people say use AI and then they just talk about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Like, they're not talking about AI, they're just talking about the one. Artificial intelligence. It could be a variety of things. It could be like computer learning how to manufacture something or make something by trial and error. ChatGPT just, you know, searches a database of information and spews it out. It's different. It's still AI, but AI is a massive sector, and everyone just goes, "Oh, it's ChatGPT," and you're like, "Wouldn't it's completely no? That's just one bit of it."
Could you tell if something's been written by?
Yeah, of course you can.
I'm sorry, of course you can. I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
Ice skating's really like,
Yeah, I think it does me nothing. Does me nothing.
So glad
you
that
just see so much of you can tell who the people are that are just using AI generated posts. It's rubbish, and responses as well. Like, some people are trialing it as well, where they're just doing it on purpose, and I think you'll end up with like these AI influencers. These are and they'll become brands within themselves. People will know that it's AI and still follow.
Slightly off topic, but you're seeing a bit of a trend across Instagram now, which is, honestly, I find it hilarious, is they're creating through like Mid-Journey and a number of other AI tools, they're creating these like female influencers basically that do not exist whatsoever, but they're generating tens and tens of thousands of followers, hundreds of thousands of followers, because they're like basically attractive women on Instagram, like any normal influencer would be. And honestly, it's mind-blowing to me that person does not exist in the real world, but it's generated an account with a ridiculous following, which is, I think, is actually dangerous in some ways. There's loads of challenges, there's loads of dangers that you hear from these types of tools and these types of technologies. But back to the point on, like, can you tell? I think you can almost always tell if a post has been written with AI. Where we find it useful is helping us develop a really, really clear understanding of many of these different industries that we're operating in, understanding that what sort of questions that these key stakeholders that we're targeting might be asking, and then our writers developing content on the back of that. Because the key really is to understand what those problems are, those challenges, and understanding the technicalities of a specific market. But the writing style and the context that it has available simply can't lean into the benefits of using story and real life experiences across brand content and across personal brand content to then generate those results that you would otherwise be able to achieve.
And given that it's so easy to produce content, because you could fire up a website in a day with hundreds and hundreds of articles, just boom, 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 boom. Just go on, answer the public, pick the, bam, 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 done, whack. It's there. I know Google and other search providers are going to be looking at this and going, well, we can't be ranking these sites that have just turned up and are just, you can see that they're just dumping information. There's going to be people that still win from it. But I'm interested in content writing and that as a skill where people might look and go, well, actually, with ChatGPT or others, we don't need to be any good. We don't need to write. What's your thoughts on still having that skill and maybe harnessing it in tandem? Where do you see content writing?
So I think the challenge is going to be different to what people think it's going to be, right? So people think the challenge is that AI is going to take over, or ChatGPT is going to take over loads of these copywriting roles. I don't think it will, because I don't think it has the ability to yet. Probably in the future it will, but not yet. I think the challenge is that people believe that it would have the same effect as having a professional writer do what they do, which effectively there's no difference in. Like, both of them have the same result, that they're likely to at least try using a tool like ChatGPT to achieve what they would normally do with a writer. So yeah, the challenge I think is going to be different to what people see it as, but it's going to have a similar outcome where people are paying less to writers. It devalues the skill. But yeah, in the real world, in terms of outcomes, it can't replicate that yet.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see where it goes, because I think when you're looking at ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT 5 and how big they're going to get, and you just won't know. And I think you hear writers, of course, they're going to be bricking it because that's their livelihood, isn't it? And they're like, oh, we can't rate. And you're like, look, lads, you might want to look at a different profession because you're just going to not have a job really quickly. And it'd be interesting to see what other areas it kind of drops into. But I think going back to what we were talking about, and I wanted to pick your brain on, was the challenges of creating content consistently for businesses and the time it takes. Talk to us about how, because if for business owners that might be listening to this, who are doing almost nothing, like barely anything, websites, mail shot campaigns, socials, any video, photographic, they're just doing nothing. It does sound quite onerous to go from zero to hero in a period of time. So I know you're trying to set realistic expectations for people, but how difficult is it to move from that zero to actually starting to become effective? What are the kind of time periods, and what are the things that those businesses need to get on board to help you do your job?
The best place to start that I often speak about to founders of maybe new industrial brands or people that have been in it for a while is on the personal brand side. Like, often they've got a good couple of thousand connections that they've built up over a number of years, and just providing relatively authentic updates to that audience is a great place to start. A couple of times a week, a few times a week. The reality is, to get it to a place where you have a full marketing operation in place within your business, the emails, the website, the LinkedIn presence, the video, the photography, that is a multiple person team that is going to be costing, if employed by that business, hundreds of thousands of pounds a year to employ full time to do that job. So, and for some businesses that is appropriate. They grow to that phase where they can have that in-house, and it often will generate a better impact than having an outsourced agency that they're working with consistently. But if they want to get to that stage after they've done a bit of personal branding, after they've tried a bit themselves, then working with an agency that has those roles in-house and just borrowing a bit of their time every week, because effectively that's what you're doing, borrowing a bit of their time, borrowing a bit of their expertise, and just taking a bit of time from that videographer, a bit from the graphic designer, a bit from the copywriter, a bit from the email marketing expert, a bit from the strategist, to then be able to deliver at least 80% as good as what they could have if they had that full in-house team.
Well, I'm looking at it and thinking most companies now will just end up having in-house videographers. We have one in our business. One of our clients has now just taken one on as well. And I think, I was reading this maybe 3 years ago that everyone was saying, look, all businesses are going to become marketing businesses because they have to, because they've got to be able to push what's happening within their businesses and create story. And how soon do you think we're going to start seeing, as I say, that particular skill set? Because for me, it's just video. That's the thing. How quick are we going to see that becomes, say, the norm, that businesses almost of any size are going to have in-house videographic teams or people?
Within the type of business size that we operate within, sort of 2.5 million to maybe 20 million, many of them, they don't even have a marketing executive in-house, let alone a video production assistant, an editor. They don't even have those roles yet. So it comes back for me to that analogy of, we always underestimate what can be done within really long time frames, but we overestimate what can happen in the next 3 to 6 months. And I feel like potentially that could be slightly the case, where we're thinking that things are going to change so much within the next 3 to 6 months because we, in our own bubbles as such, see it as something that needs to happen. Whereas we're probably talking realistically more of like a 5 to 10 year time frame, more like 5 to 10 year period, before the sort of smaller businesses within that space are going to be having these in-house content teams.
End of episode 3.
It wasn't actually episode 3 though, was it?
No, it wasn't though.
But it is for this.
It is for this. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the conversation because I'm pretty passionate about the stuff that Joe was talking about. And as a business, we tried to do not all of the things that Joe was doing, like a smaller element of the things that he was doing. So I think when you're talking to someone who's doing things that you really believe in and have really invested a huge amount of time in, it's the kind of conversation that flows. We could have kept talking, really. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. How about yourself?
Yeah, I found it interesting. Like, obviously, we tried certain parts and just couldn't really get it going, could we? But it's yeah. I just find it like it's hard.
Tough sell, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's tough when people want to know a return on investment. I think the key to, like, we spoke to many people when we was doing it. You've got to have a buy-in, which is low, that people feel comfortable at. Our buy-in wasn't, but obviously for Joe's business, they can showcase results quite quickly. Like, with if someone's spending whatever, they can go through it, and I think that's what you've got to do. You've kind of got to. It's almost like getting a first order, isn't it? You get a first order, then you kind of grow it to get the cut all off the contract bit and to get it all. And I think obviously we couldn't do that, but I think as an industry, I think from what we've seen since we recorded that in December to where we are now in June, a lot more companies now are embracing socials. I think LinkedIn's changed of how it's not all about the individual. It's more about company pages. You see sponsored ads now with videos. You're seeing, even when you post on a company page, I look back last year, if you posted on a content group page, it was like you hardly got anything. Where now, I think posting through a company page gets so much engagement. We've seen that this week posted on the Metal Guys Talk Business podcast page. We've got 400 connections, yet the actual analytics of that is in the thousands.
Yeah, and within a day as well, so it'll just keep going. It's definitely got a better reach. But I think the change as well. One of the things to mention from when we did the podcast to now is obviously the email marketing. I think this is an area that most industrial brands, a lot of industrial brands, are just really poor at doing email shots. Their websites are poor as well, so there's no, even if they are putting emails out, the landing pages are poor, and then the kind of sales funnels and the information on websites is just overwhelmingly poor. So I think with the changes that have happened with email marketing, it's going to give real opportunities to companies that double down their time and actually really focus on building good websites with good landing pages, good sales funnels, and actually having proper emails going out to clients. So that'll be quite interesting to see. And it'd be good to have Joe back, I think, maybe towards the back end of the year or next year. And again, look at where it was as of December 2023 and then fast forward 12 months.
I think in the industry, so there's a lot of groups that have independently sites, have their own, their own budgets. And I think some of the stuff about email campaigns, mail shots, and all this kind of stuff is that people, when they've got sales teams, they just expect the sales teams to having those conversations. And I think it's got to be taken away from those people locally to be looking at what do we want to be doing as a brand, how do we build a social platform, how do we collect and have people subscribing to our newsletters. It's got to be continual. I just think, we can be guilty of it at times where when it's quiet, we ramp up our marketing, we ramp up our mail shots, and you've got to be doing it continually. But when you're really busy and you're flat out and you're making money, you actually drop. And I think it's changing people's attitude and the way we communicate now. There's got to be a continual message, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you look at how we consume mail shots for our own personal emails, you're getting them come through every month, every week.
Yeah.
But whether that'll happen, who knows? I still think there's people just aren't thinking about doing that. They're just thinking about how do we generate business in the way that they've always known.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast. We said in the first couple of outros, you can really help us by sharing the podcast. Both Mike and I have invested a huge amount of time with the team behind the scenes to get this to be the best version of the podcast that we've done so far with season 3. We've created reams and reams of content to go out. So the hope is that we'll get a lot more downloads, but we'll also get a lot more reach through the social channels from the short form video kind of content that we're going to be putting out. But if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, then pass the pod on to maybe a colleague or a friend or someone else that you know in the industry. And let us know if there's topic areas that you want us to talk about, or there's people that have got interesting stories. Then get in touch, drop us a comment directly or on the feeds when you're looking at those social media posts we're putting out. And we'll try and make those things happen. Both Mike and I we're really invested in the industry sector. We find it fascinating. So we're looking forward to doing more of these. And we'll see you next week, Tuesday, for Matt Sauce.
You really wanted to say see you next Tuesday, didn't you?
Yeah. yeah, but that's unprofessional. So I might rebrand that. I'll say see you all next Tuesday.
Yeah, see you next Tuesday.
For Matt Sauce, very good podcast. And we'll catch you then.